This is the discussion table with
Avery, he, they,
Ripley, they, them,
and River, she, her.
And we will be talking about mental health and LGBTQ topics on this podcast. For this episode, we will be talking about 4 horror movies with representation of either LGBTQ plus people or people with mental illnesses. Trigger warnings for this episode include suicidal thoughts, self-harm, and murder and cannibalizing.
The first movie we will be talking about today consists of queer representation in horror movies. The first movie I'll be talking about is Fear Street, which is a movie trilogy on Netflix about a town named Shadyside that they believe was cursed by a witch. It stars Dina Johnson, who is trying to save her girlfriend Samantha Sam Fraser from the curse with her little brother Josh Johnson. This movie has great representation, considering that the couple gets to be together and live till the end, and they both end up being the saviors and protagonists of this town, breaking it from its curse.
A mental illness I will be talking about today is schizophrenia, which is a chronic brain disorder that affects less than 1% of the U.S. population. The symptoms include delusion, hallucination, disorganized speech, trouble with thinking, and lack of motivation. Also, delusions of persecution, which is when you are convinced that someone is mistreating or conspiring against or planning to harm you or your loved ones.
And there are many types of delusions. That's just one that's highlighted for this episode specifically. So the movie that I chose to watch is called They Look Like People. It's a movie about a schizophrenic man named Wyatt who has delusions of persecution and hallucinations of people's faces splitting open and revealing someone evil. He would get phone calls in the middle of the night telling him not to trust anyone and that there was a war coming. And people who were evil looked like just everyone else, making it hard to decipher who was good and who was evil. It's good representation, if maybe a little inaccurate, because Wyatt ignored his auditory hallucinations, telling him to kill his friend in the end, which is a spoiler, but whatever. Which I have researched, and I can't find any source that says if it's possible or not to ignore voices that a schizophrenic person hears.
The next movie that I'll be talking about with queer representation is It Too, which is a sequel to It by Stephen King, and about this group of kids who must return to their haunted hometown in order to defeat the evil clown that they fought as kids. One of the main protagonists is named Richie Tozier, who has a crush on his friend Eddie Casperk. At the beginning of the movie, a gay couple also gets beat up for being openly about their relationship. Richie also gets bullied by a group of homophobes during a movie flashback, and Eddie, Richie's love interest, also dies at the end of the movie, which could be seen as a bury your gays trope. It was pretty accurate representation, even if some of it was not great.
So the good representation, maybe not, but accurate, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like great representation, but it was accurate representation.
Yeah. So next is dissociative identity disorder.
The next mental illness I will be talking about is
It's dissociative.
Dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. Is a mental condition. Someone with DID has multiple distinctive personalities, diverse identities control a person's behavior at different times. The condition can cause memory loss, delusions, or depression. DID is usually caused by past trauma. Here are some of the symptoms, which also may be a trigger warning: anxiety, delusions, depression, disorientation, drug or alcohol abuse, memory loss, or suicidal thoughts or self-harm. Some of the treatments that I have found, also known as therapy focus, are identifying and working through past trauma or abuse, managing sudden behavioral changes, and merging separate identities into one single identity.
So the second movie I'll be talking about is called Split, and it's about a guy named Kevin who is the host of the many alters or personalities, and Kevin was abused by his mother when things weren't clean, so he developed different personalities to cope with the trauma. And the known alters are Patricia, Dennis, Barry, Hedwig, and many others who don't really have a part in the movie. So Barry, the first and best alter, behavior-wise, is he's very typical. He has an interest in fashion. He's not really done anything wrong. And then there's Patricia, who is bad for an unknown reason, but she's been banned from the light, which means she can't take over the host body. She's not supposed to, but she still does in the movie. So we don't know why she was banned from the light, and I think we have to watch Glass, the sequel, to know. So then there's Dennis, who likes to watch young girls dance naked.
Pervert.
Yeah, so he's a pervert, and he has OCD in quotations. So it may not be diagnosable OCD, but he has obsessions, and he's it may not be compulsive, but he is very. It may not be diagnosable OCD because he may not have compulsions, but he is definitely very obsessed with keeping things clean. And then there's Hedwig, who's a 9-year-old child who isn't good or bad because, well, he's a child.
He's a kid, he don't know nothing.
Yeah. So Hedwig is under the care of Dennis and Patricia, so it could be argued that once he grows up, he would become evil because he really trusts Patricia and Dennis to keep him safe. The last alter is the Beast, who is a monster. He's like a not human. So he has impenetrable skin. He can climb walls that are smooth, and he murders and cannibalizes people. So it is horrible representation for people with dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah, really bad.
Because, yeah, people who have dissociative identity disorder do not automatically murder and cannibalize people.
Yeah.
So while it's good, it's all right to make movies about murderous cannibals, it's not okay to make it about mental illness. Because, there could be some, but generalizing that is not okay.
Yeah, especially when there's a limited amount of movies. Then the worse representation you have, the more it becomes a stereotype.
Yeah. So I know there's other movies about dissociative identity disorder, but there's not many, and I think the most popular is Split. So it's not good representation, and I think more research should be put into another movie.
Let's also not mention that half the movies that we're talking about are spoiler alerts for people who have not seen them yet.
Yeah.
Do you recommend them to watch it?
As a learning experience, yes.
What about you?
The movies I talked about were definitely pretty good, so, I'd say It Too is definitely one of my favorite movies. And Fear Street, it's a new trilogy, and it was written really well, so.
Yeah, I've been meaning to watch that. Okay, and that is the end of our first episode.
River,
Ripley,
And Avery.
signing off.